Love history? Subscribe and explore the stories that shaped our world.
According to ancient Greek tradition, the legendary Trojan War was a monumental struggle between East and West, sparked by divine rivalry and the abduction of a single woman. The mythological origins of the conflict trace back to the goddess Eris, who caused the initial strife that led to the famous judgment of Paris. During this event, the Trojan prince Paris, son of King Priam, was asked to choose the most beautiful goddess. Paris chose Aphrodite, who in turn enabled him to abduct Helen, the extraordinarily beautiful wife of the Spartan king Menelaus. This legendary conflict was heavily influenced by divine intervention, with the pantheon taking sides. Deities like Athena, Hera, and Poseidon backed the Greek forces, while Aphrodite, Apollo, Artemis, and Ares favored the Trojans. Outraged by the seduction of Helen, a massive coalition of Achaean Greeks, led by the Mycenaean king Agamemnon, launched a vast fleet to cross the Aegean Sea. Their goal was to demand Helen's return and punish Troy, setting the stage for a devastating, decade-long war.
For 10 grueling years, the Achaean forces laid siege to the great city of Troy. The epic narrative, primarily captured in Homer's Iliad, focuses intensely on the psychology of the warriors, the tragedy of the conflict, and the wrath of the great Greek hero Achilles. The battlefield saw legendary champions clashing in brutal combat. Achilles, the cunning Odysseus, and the mighty Ajax fought for the Greeks, standing against noble Trojan defenders like Hector, Aeneas, and Paris. The Homeric heroes fought wearing bronze armor and frequently used boar tusk helmets, a detail actually preserved in the archaeological record at ancient Mycenaean sites like Knossos and Medea. Interestingly, Homer describes warriors stepping down from their chariots to engage in fierce hand-to-hand combat on foot, which scholars note was more reflective of the poet's own time than actual late Bronze Age chariot tactics. Despite the Greeks' overwhelming military might, the mighty walls of Troy held firm against the prolonged assault, resulting in a bloody stalemate. These formidable citadel defenses were over 12 feet thick and 27 feet high, constructed of limestone topped with mud brick. The interior of this practically impregnable citadel was occupied by a series of large, multi-room limestone buildings. Geomorphic reconstructions reveal that during this era, the sea approached much closer to the city, forming a marine embayment extending nearly 10 kilometers south, where the Greek ships would have been docked. To successfully attack the city, a Greek warrior would have needed to cross 1,200 feet of terrain, climb through a deep defensive ditch measuring 12 feet wide and 6 feet deep, dodge Trojan arrows, and scale the towering stone walls. The decade-long impasse was ultimately broken not by brute military force, but by sheer deception. The Greeks constructed a colossal wooden horse, concealing a select group of their finest warriors inside its hollow belly. Feigning defeat, the Greek fleet sailed away, leaving the wooden horse behind on the beach as a supposed offering. The Trojans, believing they had finally won the war, brought the massive structure into their city as a victory trophy. Under the cover of darkness, the Greek heroes emerged from the horse and opened the city gates for their returning army. The city was brutally sacked and reduced to ashes. Its men were slaughtered, and women like the Trojan princesses Cassandra and Polyxena suffered tragic fates. Surviving Trojans, such as Aeneas, were forced to flee the burning ruins, later becoming the mythic founders of new empires. Aeneas famously wandered to Italy to found Rome, Antenor sailed to Venice, and Brutus reportedly traveled to the British Isles. The horrific events of the sack echoed through history. As penance for the Greek hero Ajax raping Cassandra in the sanctuary of Athena, the Greek city of Locris sent 2 maidens to Troy annually to clean the temple, a tribute that continued until the 1st century BC.
While modern archaeology provides no evidence that a literal hollow horse played a role in the attack, some scholars suggest the myth might represent a battering ram covered with horse decorations used to breach the walls.
For centuries, the tale of Troy was widely regarded by modern scholars as a beautiful romance or fable, completely devoid of historical truth. However, in the 1870s, a wealthy self-made millionaire named Heinrich Schliemann became obsessed with proving that Homer's epic was real. Guided by the earlier work of Frank Calvert, Schliemann began excavating a mound in northwestern Turkey known as Hisarlik. Digging a massive, destructive trench through the site, he sensationally uncovered a cache of gold vessels and jewelry in 1873, claiming he feverishly dug it up with his wife, Sophia. He dubbed this the Treasure of Priam and smuggled it out of the Ottoman Empire. Yet modern scholarship has revealed the extent of Schliemann's calculated myth-making. Sophia was actually in Athens during the discovery, and the treasure was secretly taken to Berlin before disappearing during World War II. Furthermore, later archaeological work by Carl Blegen and Wilhelm Dorpfeld proved that Schliemann had actually excavated Troy II, an early Bronze Age settlement that predated the Homeric War by 1,000 years. Instead, the later layers, known as Troy VI and Troy VIIa, dating to the 13th and 12th centuries BC, were identified as the true candidates for Homer's Troy. Modern excavations led by Manfred Korfmann since 1988 have utilized magnetometer surveys to reveal a sprawling lower city defended by a massive rock-cut ditch 11.5 feet wide. Korfmann argued this proved late Bronze Age Troy was a formidable, heavily populated citadel spanning over 75 acres. However, this is fiercely debated. Scholars like Frank Kobe argue that the lower city is largely an illusion, suggesting the ditches were merely quarries or water channels, and pointing out the conspicuous lack of luxury imports to support the idea of a massive metropolis.
As archaeologists and historians continue to debate the ruins, the real Trojan War emerges as a conflict deeply intertwined with the geopolitical turmoil of the late Bronze Age. Situated strategically at the entrance of the Dardanelles, Troy, known in Hittite records as Wilusa, controlled maritime traffic between the Aegean and the Black Seas, though the actual volume of this trade is heavily disputed. During this era, Troy was caught in a broader political struggle between the powerful Hittite Empire in central Turkey and the expanding Mycenaean Greeks, whom the Hittites referred to as the Ahiawa. Hittite diplomatic texts, such as the Tagalawa and Manapa-Tarhunda letters, attest to ongoing political turmoil and anti-Hittite activities in western Anatolia, and even mention a political alliance with a ruler named Alexandru of Wilusa, strongly corresponding to Alexander, or Paris, of Ilios. The archaeological record shows that the mighty Troy VI settlement was severely damaged around 1275 BC, likely by a massive earthquake. The city was quickly rebuilt as Troy VIIa, but its inhabitants lived in crowded, fearful conditions, sinking huge storage jars into their floors to prepare for an impending siege. Around 1200 BC to 1180 BC, this settlement was violently destroyed by warfare and fire. Archaeologists have unearthed burned timbers, unburied human skeletons, and heaps of sling stones and arrowheads in the destruction layer, pointing to a brutal siege. This violent end perfectly aligns with the turbulent era of the late Bronze Age collapse, a period when a perfect storm of warfare, droughts, earthquakes, and the mysterious migrating sea peoples devastated the Mediterranean world. Among these sea peoples were groups like the Chequer, whom some scholars link to the Teucrians or Trojans, and the Peliset, who became the Philistines. Ultimately, while the exact causes remain debated, the widespread destruction of this Anatolian city
left a profound scar on the region, immortalized in the oral traditions of the Greeks as the epic legend of the Trojan War.